All right, so we have a quorum. We'll get started. Any public participation? I don't see any. Anybody else? Okay. So Joe, what I was thinking is you could run through the summation.
Yep.
And then we would look at the book to give David and Stefan an overview of the book that you provided.
Sure.
And then, obviously go very informal, go through questions as we go. And in your email, you talked about changes to current fiscal year. I think we'll get to that after the summation in the book, just to hit it. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. So I included it in the email. That was something that the book was printed before the article went forward. So the totals changed because they settled the contract. So what I didn't want to have happen was you to go through and start doing analysis and then hit me back with why something's off here and I don't get what it is. So
right.
I wanted to make sure you had that in case you were starting to get into the math and then, it didn't jive. That way you didn't spend a whole bunch of time going through 400 lines of an Excel workbook to try to figure that piece out.
Exactly. And Stefan just joined. You just say hello and introduce yourselves, you two, please, if you don't mind.
Sure. So Stefan, I'm Joe Conway, Director of Public Works. With me, Ann Waite, our business manager here. Welcome to the subcommittee.
Thanks, Joe. Nice to meet you all.
Great.
All right. So without further ado, so basically is highlighted in the summation. I'll start with the tax levy side of the budget first. Personal services for this year, a couple of areas that are getting addressed are contractual increases with the three unions, within Public Works. We have the laborers union, which is basically our field staff, the clerical union, which does most of the administrative roles, and then the supervisory union is the head of the highway department, the head of the water and sewer, parks, forestry, and cemetery. They're kind of like your mid-level management team. One of the other things that's getting addressed in the tax levy side of the house this year is a partial refunding of our budget from last year. So after town meeting last year and the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, the town unfortunately had to cut $110,500 from our personal services lines. So we're addressing one of the areas that they cut by partially refunding that. The other area we'll talk about when we get into it, it's related to the highway division. And there's a reason why we didn't have to fund most of that money back into it. Some other areas of personal services, overtime adjustments related to the new collective bargaining agreements, and then a couple adjustments with some temporary help to make sure that we're aligned with minimum wage. The engineering side of the tax levy budget, the net increase is $61,062. The engineering side of the house, so I've said it a couple of years in the past, but probably for Stefan and David, the government was nice enough to give us an unfunded mandate, essentially, and they put together a stormwater permit that we have to comply with. We're at the point now in our permit where we're having to test outfalls all throughout town and send all of those water samples that we take to laboratories to test. We're testing it for a whole bunch of different things that are dictated through that permit. So this is to stay in line with that testing and get that to an appropriate level so that we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul in other areas of the budget. In the highway division, we increased traffic lines $10,000. The reason that we did this historically, at least for the past 3 or 4 years that I've been involved in the budgeting, we have never budgeted enough money to do all the line painting that we need to do during the year. Knowing the things like the Albion Street project, the Vision project, we were actually just awarded another grant on Friday. We get $122,000 to do a sidewalk project down at the intersection of Main Street, Oak Street, and Greenwood Street in Greenwood. Line painting is going to become something that's going to get more intricate, and the scope is probably going to expand as these things become live. So we're going to make the effort now to try to incrementally build that up to its a level appropriate to when all these different projects come online and we have to paint them every year. That's something that we can address realistically. In the building side of the tax levy budget, the electricity line is up $21,062. The majority of this is related due to the increase in usage of the Civic Center. With the school department using that as basically school session part B or after school, the occupancy and the use in the building has basically gone from something that was, I'd say probably 50% of where it could be to 110% of where it could be. We track all the electric bills, all the gas bills that come in. We use a 5-year average for consumption, and we budget according to that. The rates that we use in the book, I talk to PD on directly to make sure that I'm conservative enough where I'm, accounting for changes, but I'm close to where he's at. That way, I'm not too high or too low, and I don't get myself in the jam. Forestry and parks. This is something about 2 years ago, we have a contractual piece of the budget there where we actually hire out outside contractors to help us with some tree work. What we found in the last few years is that we benefit greatly from the aggressive tree trimming program that the light department puts on, and our street trees are generally in excellent shape and can be managed in-house through our regular operation. What we found is that some of the trees that we've been needing to address over time are actually located further off the right of way, requiring us to get cranes or specialized equipment to reach it, where we couldn't lift a pine tree, over a residence's house. So the goal was to bring this budget line item up to $30,000 annually, and by increasing it $5,000 this year, we've hit that. Another piece of the tax levy, snow and ice, we've decided to keep the same. There is, a budgetary average in there as a note that, your average winter is generally about $1.4 million. I will say, though, that if we continue to see a trend like last year, the year before, and hopefully how this year is going to end, that those budgetary averages are probably likely to change. We've been pretty fortunate with that, where we haven't been forced to do an override now in 2 years, and we're cautiously optimistic that that is going to be the case for the future. So that basically sums up the tax levy side of the budget. I'll say our group this year tried to keep it as modest as possible, right? So we're totally aware that the financial picture of what next year is going to look like, I don't think anybody really understands. Everybody's trying to, predict and forecast conservatively. So we wanted to make sure that anything that we increased was either contractual and we had to, or something that was a priority as far as the budget is concerned. So do you want to stop and talk about this, or you want me to keep going?
Yep, why don't you stop for a minute? So I think the folks know, but so the DPW takes care of all the buildings, right, Joe, in town?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I probably should have started with that. I took that assumption for granted.
It's all right. I just some of the things I recall. Go ahead. Yep.
No, so basically we're responsible for all the public buildings in town. We share a little bit of an overlap with the school department, but our group is responsible for most of the capital related to that. We're responsible for every piece of the public right of way. So sidewalks, roadways, drainage utility, water utility, sewer utility, all the open space in town. We do all the town's engineering and building permit review related to the right of way. We also do refuse, recycling, we do snow removal. When asked this question, usually I give the short answer. I said, typically the only things that we don't have our hands in are gas and electric.
Okay.
I think that pretty much sums it up.
Right, and then so you speak about the tax levy side, and then the water and sewer enterprise, and they're self-funded more or less, and so
Correct. Yep.
Basically on the tax levy side, what you just covered. And again, we'll look at the book at kind of a high level in a minute. I just didn't know if anybody, Dennis or anybody, had questions so far, really.
I got questions regarding some of the individual line items, but we can do that later if you want. I don't care.
Yep.
Take them up.
That's fine. And Joe, the book, was there spreadsheets for the book and for the accounting and stuff that you were going to send, or do you have in Excel or not?
Didn't I send you basically the book file in Excel?
Yeah, it came both ways, PDF and
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I was just looking for it and I didn't see it. I saw the capital. All right, I have it then. I just didn't see it. So,
Yeah, so
Okay.
I think
It's
I,
entitled Master for FY '22, right?
yes, yep. So I remember last year, Jim, I think I only sent it in PDF. I thought you had asked me for the Excel, so I sent it in both versions.
right, yep,
It was sent on the 28th, I think, if you're looking for it.
yep. I got it now. Thank you. Yep. Sorry about that. Okay.
I did have a
Yeah,
couple
go ahead.
of
Why don't you move?
questions.
Sure, go ahead.
For the snow and ice, I noticed that back in, I think it was the winter of 2015, where we had that nightmare winter. How is that overage handled?
So typically, if we have a bad winter like that, myself or whoever's in my position would have to go to the town council and I believe the finance committee and ask for an override, which affects next year's tax levy. So basically, we borrow against the future to take care of the safety issue that happens during the winter. Fortunately for me, I have not had to go through that process yet, and if I could have any good fortune in anything in my career, that is, hopefully something that I will not have to frequently do. I don't know, maybe not to put you on the spot, Jim, if you have any other experience related to that.
No, I can't recall whether it was it's a transfer, but I don't know if it was in a reserve fund transfer or a free cash. But yeah, I was on the board at the time, and I've often argued to raise the money up and based on if you've seen the book, Joe and company, do a really good job at 5-year averaging, that they take a really good look at a lot of things. And I've often argued that, why isn't it more? And Steve and Kevin have a solid argument as to why it's not more, because, it obviously locks the funds in, and if it's not used. And then we've often argued about even lowering it and just doing the transfer later. And that's problematic as well. They don't recommend doing that. So, like I said, I don't know if it's a free cash transfer or a reserve fund transfer, but either way, Dennis.
It's a state law, basically, that it gets pledged next year's taxes, because if you raise it, you have to keep it raised for, I believe, 3 years in a row. And if you
It is, yep.
in order to reduce it, it's the same thing. You got to keep it down. So it's historically been that, let's leave it where it is. And if you have to pledge it to next year's tax rate, you do. We are fortunate that we've been finally increasing it to a tolerable limit, so you don't get hit with a $500,000 increase to next year's taxes right off the bat. If we're going to see anything for a major storm now at 850, to get over $1 million, that extra 250 is gonna have to be a real big storm. So I don't see us going beyond that for a while, based on current conditions. But I would not want to lower it and be really locked in for the future 3 years if we get hit with a bad storm, and now you're really increasing the tax rate in the following year. So that's basically where it's been. It's a state law. All towns do it. Cities play the game more than cities and towns do about pledging to next year's tax rate to keep their tax rate down. So that's where we are on that.
Thanks, Dennis. One other question I had too, and Jim had mentioned this, that the enterprise funds essentially funds itself. So, and I imagine that's what we see on a regular basis, the enterprise transfers that we see in other budgets that go into to fund essentially this enterprise account.
And so it works both ways. So if you take like the administrative line, for example, so there is a transfer for a portion of some personal services related to that, under the thought that, myself, for example, we have basically three houses that we manage. We manage the tax side, where everything that is funded through property taxes. We manage the water enterprise, which is everything that is funded through the water rate, and then the sewer side, which is everything that's funded in that. There are a couple other divisions, the buildings division, there's a transfer in there as well for some of the things that they do, the property owned by the sewer and water divisions, and the same thing for fleet. Typically outside of that, there aren't too many overlaps because they are self-funded. Try to keep them very separate related to that.
And are there any, I guess, transfers coming from the school?
Into that, so the school would pay, they get billed basically like any other
Okay,
account in town, so they would pay into that as well.
okay, thank you.
Nothing on the personal services side related to that, though.
All right. You want to run down the highlights on the memo then?
So I'll move on to the sewer side really quick. So our NWRA assessment has decreased $58,668. Our budget increase, including the MWRA portion, is 0.2285%. Our budget increase, if you were to take out the MWRA portion, is 0.8832%. The MWRA sewer assessment is representing 75.63% of our budget. Some things to highlight in this, much like the tax side, there are some personal services adjustments to the contractual agreements between the labor unions and the town. Overtime related to those adjustments. There's an administrative expense increase in here. One of the things that the enterprises do is we fund a portion of the tax collector's office. So Stefan, all the water bills get processed by the tax collector's office, and because we're using their resources and workforce to be able to do that, we contribute to a little bit of that cost there. On the purchase of service side, based on our averages in our forecasting, the electricity and natural gas is up a slight bit, $4,009. There's a $27,000 increase in the Farm Street pumping station line item. This is something that we put in as kind of a preventative maintenance to that. I've probably repeated it about 10 times this budget season. I'll probably continue to do it, but the corner of Farm Street and Water Street is the most important building that the town of Wakefield owns. I'd say 85 to 90% of what goes down the drain makes it to that building. Whatever solids may exist in that get pulverized, and that gets pumped towards the MWRA's big conduit lines. That building is basically the ejector pump for everything that goes through the sewer. So what we do with this $27,000 is quarterly, we put the building through basically a preventative maintenance checkup. So much like you or I would go to the doctor, we shut the building down very briefly. We take the wells that are inside of it and we actually clean them. We bring in pump trucks, we get rid of all the grease, all the nasty, and make sure that that thing is as clean as can be in the well side of the house as possible. One of the benefits, the pumps are very expensive to replace. We want to make sure that what's going through that is as clean as it possibly can be. The other thing, if we can catch the grease at that point in time, we're not pumping it down the line and causing a problem further on. So this increase of $27,000 represents a quarterly cleaning of that building. And that's something that we will continue to do as a good preventative maintenance practice because of the importance of that piece. The emergency fund line item in the budget increased $3,000. Really, the reason why we did this is to make sure that we have enough money. God forbid if a pump went in that building, or we had to do some other high-level work related to that, the $27,000 that was in that line item before wouldn't even pay to replace one of the Farm Street pumps. So we brought that up a little bit just to cover a little bit of our expenses. There's a $13,151 sewer user charge increase. What this is there are Wakefield homes that actually connected to different communities' utilities. So I'll give you a good example. On the sewer side, behind the Rotary, there's a good amount of Wakefield homes that are connected to Reading sewer system. Because the water is going from the Wakefield home into the Reading sewer system, we essentially pay Reading for for the sewer that's going through there because they're assessed from the MWRA. This charge is based on an average of the billing, and then we take a look at what the different communities' assessment rate increases are, and we adjust accordingly. Sewer material and supplies is up a small amount this year, $2,000. And then we're seeing a debt decrease of $63,518. And basically what that is some of the I&I loans that we had to do some sewer related work to take out extraneous flows. Those loans are starting to fall off the books, so we recognize the savings there.
Joe, and what is I&I?
Inflow and infiltration. So think of it like this. Because the pipes are in the ground and a lot of Wakefield sewer infrastructure was built somewhere between 1900 and 1970, things wear out and they're prone to taking groundwater. This is a program that we've been doing through the MWRA. It's a grant loan program where we basically do $1 million in sewer work a year, and the MWRA picks up 75% of the cost of the project. It accomplishes two things. It gets rid of all the groundwater or potential connections into the sewer, which then we're going to have to pay to treat. And it also structurally aligns the infrastructure in the street. So we're doing two things. We're getting a stronger pipe in the road, and we're also limiting the amount of water flow that is heading into the MWRA meters and costing our assessment money.
Yep.
So one thing to note on that, the town is in phase 12 of 13. The next phase 13 is a 100% loan, interest-free for 10 years. We have not gotten any word on whether or not the grant matching opportunity is going to continue. We continually hear that that's something that they want to pursue and push forward into further years. It just hasn't materialized yet. So does anybody have anything on the sewer before I slide down to water?
So the assessment went in the right direction for a change? Is that what?
Yeah, so not that anything good came out of anything related to how this last year shaped up, but one of the positive things that the MWRA did is they recognized that communities didn't know what the financial picture was. So the MWRA dialed back the capital plan and actually deferred some work, which resulted in a savings to the towns, cities, and communities. They did that late in the budget season. They actually reduced the assessment $275,000, which caused our assessment to drop and create a net savings for us. So I don't know if we'll ever see that again. I'm sure that when the financial picture kind of aligns and people can get a little bit more comfortable with forecasting the future, they'll probably start to add in, some of that deferred work. But at least for the short term, we've seen a benefit.
Yeah. So when you see the book, you'll see that DPW always does it this way. They show the change in budget with and without MWRA. I mean, some years it was, a very, very large number. And so, you see a budget increase, a substantial budget increase, but actually it's just mostly the assessment. So that's why you see the two numbers. And in this year, it's actually the opposite of what we're used to seeing. You get a 12-14% assessment. So the budget really takes a hit, and that's why it's cut out that way. So good.
Anybody else on sewer related, or do you want me to continue?
Just on the sewer, if it's not already published, you got a typo there under sewer purchase services. If you want to, the $4,000 or $4 for the electric. I don't know if it's published yet to everybody else, Joe, or not, but.
Nope, it's actually not going to go anywhere until we're done talking.
Yep. Well, that's why I'm here, to check your punctuation.
That was an alertness test. You passed with flying colors. You found it. It's like the daily double in Jeopardy.
There you go. David, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I have a quick question on the Farm Street pumping station. I think that's a good plan because I've dealt with this recently on a condo board I'm in, and I was just wondering, I agree with the preventative maintenance, but do we know the life of the existing equipment / pump, and just give an update there?
I don't have that right in front of me. I can get that to you. I can tell you that the pumps are all recently replaced within the last 10 years. And then within the last 20 years, the building had kind of a major overhaul done. One of the things that
Okay.
we're hoping to do this year is we're going to bring in the company Weston and Sampson does a lot of some of the high level, very intricate, detailed sewer stuff for us on the engineering side. I would like to bring them in and have them evaluate the building and kind of give me a risk level assessment on that so that I can plan for, kind of lay out the next couple of years in front of me so I can see that, all right, I'm on year, let's say 5 of the VFD pumps in there, but I know at year 15, I got to start thinking about replacing them. So I want to be able to kind of lay that out in front of me.
Yeah, that's where I was going, because those things are probably big ticket items, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Okay.
We're totally on board.
They don't sound ancient yet, so that's good news. And You're
No,
on,
no.
you're
and-
on
and
it.
The other thing too is that there are a couple other lift stations throughout town. We finished rebuilding the last one in the 18-19 fiscal years. So our pump stations are in really good shape right now.
Okay.
And-
Thanks.
Dennis, go ahead.
The materials and supplies, historically, we have 10,000 for chemicals, but we don't even get near 1,000. Why are we keeping that chemical line out under sewer? I can see it underwater, but why are we keeping it at 10,000?
So this is something in the budget that we've used. I mean, the one thing with sewer I'll say is, you'll have years where you might not even get to 5,000. You'll have years where you go 15,000 on that. We're trying to get proactive to the point where we're chemical free. What we don't want to do is introduce things to keep the pipes flowing that are going to erode the conduit. Something for the future to probably pay attention to, especially now that the preventative maintenance piece is going to start to kick in. Hopefully we're going to lower the level of grease that we have in things. We don't have to start treating it to shock it into flowing.
Well, I'm looking at historically, you're 62,000, 60,000, and we're going up from 82 to 85, now to 87. And this 10,000 is a driver in that. So if we get that thing back to $1,000, we picked up your 2,000 trying to add, and it's reducing an item that we historically don't use. I mean, I'm not going to quiver about the rest of them, but that's a major difference of you don't even get near $1,000 and you get $10,000 for an item. That's over 10% cushion on the rest of the line items just with that.
Yeah, I think if you were to go in and look at the appropriation of, like, say, fiscal 2020 versus the actual expenditure of fiscal 2020, we have $5,000 difference in there, really. What we could probably do is adjust that line and correctly account for maybe some of the other areas we might be a little bit heavier.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you want to keep the 87.1, put that 10,000, move 8 of it somewhere else, and that's more realistic that possibly can get hit in a bad area. Don't leave it in an item that sticks out like a big block here. So I just if you need it, fine, but put it somewhere else where where you're possibly going to run into it.
Yeah, that shouldn't be an issue at all.
I just don't want to have somebody else question it that says you don't need chemicals for sewer other than for cleaning, and you're taking care of the cleaning and you purchase the services. So let's not use it if we don't need it. Other than that, I don't see any other major changes in your materials versus labor other than, still can't seem to spin the water in. You still can't seem to get somebody to run a pumping.
I got some good news related to that though too. So we'll get there. Dennis, did you have anything, or did anybody have anything else related to sewer that we wanted to talk about before I keep going?
I had one thing that I wanted to bring up, and just wanted to make sure that you were aware of this, but if you drive down Main Street towards Melrose, there's a house with a giant sign in their front yard.
Right by the
And
dog
they-
side.
And they're talking about, I guess.
Is that one of your employees, Joe? Excuse me.
No, I don't think so.
I assume you know the sign that I'm talking about.
Yes, I do. So that is something that has been presented to the council. I believe that the number is 13 times over the last 20 years. And whether or not they want to put a policy in place and allow irrigation meters. It had existed for a while. I think, most recently, probably in the mid to late 90s. Then the council put a moratorium on it. The last time the council was presented this option, they had chose to continue the moratorium, but revisit that in 2022. So in this budget season, we're going to be taking a look at that again. We'll present all the information, good, bad, indifferent, on what putting that program into place would be, how that affects the water user throughout town, how that affects the sewer user throughout town, and then give them all the tools to make the most informed decision that they can. So a revisit is coming up with that. Where that's going to land, I couldn't tell you. I guess it would be up to what the board's decision would be, but they'll be given everything they can to make the most informed decision that they can.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
I just wanted to note too that I'm going to be going mobile. So I may go dark here, but I'll still be online.
perfect.
Okay.
All right, so if
Water.
nobody has anything out in the water side. Our MWRA water assessment decreased $35,576 this year. Part of the reason why this decrease happened is because we have somebody in the plant now pumping full time, and that person is coming in earlier and turning our plant on when consumption is at its peak. Wakefield's MWRA assessment went down. Reading's assessment increased on the water side 18.5%. Stoneham's water assessment increased 24.6%. Melrose's water assessment increased 13.6%. Wakefield went negative 1.3%. So we went backwards when the whole cooperative of the MWRA, with the exception of 3 or 4 communities, increased just about double digits, if not more. So kudos to those guys for recognizing the peak timing of that and making sure that they're the most effective in pumping that building when they can. Our budget increase on the water side is 3.4637% with the MWRA. The budget increase without the MWRA is 4.05%. The MWRA portion of the water budget is 45.36%. Much like the other two sides, personal service adjustments in straight time and overtime. The other half of the administrative expense that pays for the tax collector's office is split. We do have a pretty decent sized increase in maturing debt. If you remember, probably Dennis and Jim, Rick, my predecessor, had a warrant article for a bonding article, do $4 million worth of water main replacement through a borrowing. The ban has finally kicked in, and we owe payment on that for the first year this year. So our debt is a little bit higher this year. Happy to report, though, we're reached the peak. Every year from now on, it's a little bit tiny to read in the printout that I gave you, but the debt will start falling off as we move forward. The purchase of services side of the water budget is up $41,752. Much like the sewer user charge, the water user charge has increased to account for homes connected to other towns' utilities. As I mentioned before, both Melrose, Reading, and Stoneham have seen a much larger increase than us, so we're expecting that, the rates for us to get water to these homes that need it from the other communities will likely go up. Professional services for contractors. This is basically work where we have to call somebody in who is there to help us in places that we can't get. I'll give you an example. If we have a water main that's 20 feet deep, or something that's particularly challenging where it's not safe for our people to get there with the equipment that we have, we'll bring in contracted help to help us. Your average price for water installation in the street is between $140 and $200 a foot. So preparing for realistic cost adjustments, we moved that number up to a total of $75,000 for the year. The other area of professional services that had changed is water production. What this is because we're pumping, we are held to a higher standard of water quality and testing, and some other things related to being a municipal water supplier. So what this is a budget line item for the treatment plant to specifically account for and call out some of the things that they're doing related to that activity. It's easier for us to account for. We can track it. We can start to develop trends and budget for it. Right now, that line item was shared through other line items in the budget and basically fit in where it could get fit in. Steve and the crew had decided that this year they thought that was going to be something that they needed, and we thought it was fitting to add in. Outside of that,
And again, you for those, we're pumping Crystal Lake, right? So instead of taking all the water from MWRA, is that right?
correct. So the town of Wakefield basically can pump about 10% of our consumption out of Crystal Lake. Part of our agreement with the MWRA specifically states that because the town has that in place, we cannot get rid of it unless it's financially infeasible to do so. As you can see with the way that the water assessment worked out this year, when that thing is as efficiently operated as it can actually prove to be a great asset to us.
I'm totally in favor of keeping it. It is an asset.
Any questions on the water side? All right, so Joe, the other thing David had asked about the pump. You usually have a 5-year forecast for, is it capital related items and so forth? Is that another section of a book I used to get or not? Or is that part of the capital team?
It's part of the capital planning book. They're in the middle of it. I could certainly send you our portion of it to kind of show what the forecast is related to that.
Yeah, that's all right. But so folks know, so you help with the capital planning too. You do the capital, you work with the capital subcommittee and the capital line item, correct?
Right. So my role in that is the capital planning committee will meet with all the department heads who wish to ask for capital requests for the year. My role, I'm the facilitator in the group. I have a night where I obviously advocate for public works and try to make sure that all of our bases are covered and we're funded for the things that we've identified as priorities. But the other piece I'll do is I'll reach out to the school department, the police department, the fire department, coordinate the meetings, and then I basically become the scribe for the committee. So they'll go through, we'll have discussions, evaluate some things. I'll run the spreadsheets for them. If they have any requests of any other department head or want to see further information, I'll kind of quarterback it from there and make sure they have everything they need. This year they got about $7 million in requests, and the goal for them was to whittle that down to $2 million. So they're working pretty hard on that.
Okay, great. So just in the book, so we have the spreadsheet, which I didn't see that I got, but I'm looking at it now. So the book and then the spreadsheet, and the highlight that I would bring, that you would bring, is that you have all sorts of very, very useful data within the book. In the back, as you spoke about MWRA assessments, for example, that's all in there, the other towns, some of your 5-year averages on your usage, on your electricity and stuff like that. So there's a lot of there's a lot of solid homework done typically by your predecessor and by you when it comes to this budget. I just want to highlight that. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
No, I would say kudos to Rick Stinson, though. The one nice part about me inheriting his former position was Rick had longitudinal data for days, which is excellent because it makes trying to establish patterns and trends and look for different abnormalities throughout the years. It made it great. It also presents, well, to kind of get a holistic perspective on where things were, throughout time. So I wholeheartedly agree.
Yep. Great. Any questions from the spreadsheet / book
Yeah, I got a couple.
from anybody? Sure.
Yeah, on, back to the regular budget, the main budget. On, your engineering purchase of services, up $5,000 from the previous year for equipment maintenance and software, but it's staying consistent around 20 grand. What new program are we getting in the spring to eat that up? The other 5,000.
So that was level funded from fiscal 2021. So that's in anticipation for another CAD license. So
I mean, because so far through the end of the year, we're right where we were the year before, so with the licenses. So I didn't know if we were adding any more come spring to get to that 5,000 that you were looking for.
we will be. So one of the transformations that happened shortly after the fiscal 21 budget, Claire, who had served as our stormwater manager, moved back home to California. And when we evaluated, potential candidates to take her position, we actually ended up hiring a gentleman who was a PE. So he's going to be taking on some of that role where Claire was not. So she did not get into design or anything like that in the AutoCAD where Nathan, who came on board, would.
Okay, so you're gonna be picking up an AutoCAD, but
Yes.
to this line that you haven't. Okay. All right, that answers that question. Okay, as far as again, equipment maintenance in under the fleet. Historically, you're in the 40s and we're still keeping level funded at 60. What are we anticipating? I know you talked about repainting the sanders and stuff like that, but I see you spent 35,000 so far.
Hmm.
You got another 10, so what are we gonna be doing for another 15?
Ian, do you have a live number of what we're at right now? One of the interesting things with the equipment maintenance is, so some of the things that affect this, if we have a light winter, right, our vehicles aren't out and going crazy. The other thing is with the way that the COVID-19 affected us and construction paused for a little bit, we had a little bit of an effect there. We have an aging fleet. One of the things that happened inconveniently right in the middle of the hurricane that basically hit the town of Wakefield in August, the crane truck that we asked for in capital last year was deferred and it had a major motor problem. So we had to fix that, where that was something that we probably wouldn't have wanted to get into, but it literally died at the most inopportune time that it ever could. So that's part of the reason why that budget is a little bit over where it should be. We still do want to sandblast and paint the loader for preventative maintenance purposes. Those are super expensive pieces. So we're going to make sure that we're getting 20, 25 years out of those.
And I'll just jump in. Yeah, it's currently now we've spent 49,475. So we have a remaining 10,524.
Okay, all right. And none of that is CARES Act reimbursable, right?
Not for that, no. The one place that we did do very well with CARES Act is based on, so when the whole pandemic came about, right, the concentration on everything became HVAC, air quality, air movement. cleanliness related to that. Most of the eligibility for CARES Act funding that could be used with the town is related to that. Not so much on the fleet side.
Right. Has the CARES Act money been put back into this budget yet? I know in a lot of the budgets, Jim, it hasn't been that we've been looking at because they haven't transferred it yet. Because personnel seems to be up and obviously under your building budget by what you're just saying, HVAC, which I assume the school's got their grant money for HVAC, but is it being implemented in our budget?
It will be. We have all that accounted for. The one, both myself and Ann have had experience with the FEMA reimbursements before. So at the onset of this, it was something that we knew that would eventually become a FEMA disaster and be reimbursable. So we've been chronicling our expenses and saving all of our information to make sure that we do get all that refunded appropriately. The buildings division essentially became a professional cleaning company 24 hours a day and an HVAC company. I can tell you that in the town of Wakefield, there's not one HVAC appliance or feature that they did not physically touch and make sure it's working. That includes the public schools. So some of that they had to do on off hours and required a little bit more of an expense in overtime, which I do not believe has been brought back to us yet, but it is scheduled to come back, and Kevin will debit the accounts for that.
Is the school paying us to use the Civic Center?
For the after hours piece,
I don't
I'm
care if
not-
it's after hours or not. Are they paying us to use it, which is increasing the electricity budget, et cetera? They should be paying it.
I don't disagree with you. I think that is a conversation that Steve and Kevin have been having. It has not been brought to me yet. I think that scenario is likely because I believe that scenario would become either FEMA or CARES eligible expense. They basically had to use that building because you were going through the winter and you needed space, and you needed space, you needed it indoors. Where do we have space? We had it at the Civic Center.
I understand that, but just like the offset down at the Civic Center offset and Common Street rental, staying even at 115.
Yep.
Has that been depleted yet? Who do we have renting now? Because it's basically all the town people in there.
Right.
And
Yeah.
as far as I know, it's the only one left is the credit union.
We haven't done that transfer yet, so we haven't dipped into that yet. But we haven't talked about what that transfer may or may not look like this year. But I do know that they've been talking about the school department sending some funds over to make that CARES eligible.
Okay.
I saw a rental, something was like 150 grand, and then I lost it. And
That's in forestry.
Yeah.
Yep. Tree removal and equipment rental.
Right.
182,205.
Yeah, thanks. Yep. And that was due to the storm.
Yeah, so that budget was basically to mitigate everything that came down in that storm. Our best estimate is we lost 160 trees in a 30-minute window, and we spent basically the whole month doing tree work. This was to bring in the cranes. We actually had to set up a crane on Church Street and pull some of the big, massive trees out of the old cemetery. We also had 2 machines in basically the better half of a week. We were taking down 25 trees a day and material handling them. Typically you get a windstorm, knocks a tree over. We can move it with the front end loader, make it safe. We'll chip it up. We'll get it out of the way. I don't think anybody's ever seen anything like that that's ever happened. We reached out to FEMA and MEMA to see if there was any eligibility for us to get some funding for that. And essentially the answer from them was, outside of potentially sending you some mutual aid help, you haven't hit a $5 million mark, and you're on your own. So that number is based off of basically that's that storm in a nutshell.
Okay,
And that's
thank
for both the cleanup on the street, all the incidental related tree work. And we also had to remove 2 piles at Nahat Street, because that's where it was stored in the interim.
Joe, what is security townwide under building for 35,000?
Security townwide is related to the camera systems, doors, locks, different things like that, gates, fences.
Yeah, because we haven't spent a dime yet, and we spent 20 grand the year before, but that's when we updated the entry systems and stuff. I understood that, but what are we planning to do in the spring for 35,000?
So I do know Chris has done some door work on that. He had replaced some deadbolts in some places that weren't locking efficiently. Some of the things with this stuff is, I hate to keep going back to it, but it is a very real influence on kind of how we operated. His folks were so busy on cleaning and maintaining and doing HVAC that, some of those things that we normally would have been able to get to were naturally deferred, at least through, probably for the sake of the last budget between July and probably September 1st. So we actually kind of got out of the gate on a few things a little bit late. I would anticipate that spending would probably level off to be pretty average. Just a little behind the 8 ball. When this expenditure report was done, it was warrant 26, which is smack dab in the middle of the fiscal year, which is just about the week of Christmas. So that would have been low at that point, but as time carries on, all those numbers will likely increase and change.
Okay, we haven't done anything yet. Now, I know with COVID, a lot of this stuff is deferred, but are you gonna be able to double it by putting another 35 in for this year? That's all I'm saying. It's just, we haven't spent a dime and we got 35 now. Can this be a holdover and not fund for this year?
It could, if that situation presents itself, it could either be a holdover or it could be a turn back. So we would just, essentially let, Kevin, Steve, the finance committee know that this is something that, we've done everything that we can do for the year. We're going to start fresh and the remaining balance can be applied back to the general fund.
Well, I'm trying to get away from seeing big numbers come back, just like my next question would be roof repairs townwide.
Yep.
Historically, we're 50 and 60, and now we're up to 100. Even with the hurricane, we only spent 34 so far. So,
Yep.
Are we going to come near that this year?
Yes, we should, our balance on that budget. I just signed a PO today to do some roof work at the town hall and a few other miscellaneous buildings. That will be spent out to about 87, 88,000, probably by next week.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Dennis, any other items you wanted to hit on?
Well, under the HVAC, we haven't spent much. Unless that's the Johnson control number, that 160,000. Is that the Johnson control contract for under building for purchase of services?
No, that's the line item for partially Johnson Control, partially the operating. This is a line item where, to be transparent, you're probably going to see a halfway decent return, only because whatever was eligible to be funded through FEMA and CARES, we applied there. We took care of whatever we could that was reimbursable through them, which actually makes that line item seem like it hasn't been touched. I can tell you this year we've probably done more HVAC work than we've ever done before.
Well, that's why I'm saying is, have we got CARES Act money offsets in this budget or not? If it's in some places, yeah, I think it should be highlighted so we at least know as a body for the finance committee. Some of these are not true figures today, some are. I mean, because
So
is being told so far in our budgets that CARES Act money hasn't been put in here yet.
Yep.
If you are being efficient in putting it in through December. Congratulations, but put the offset number in there that CARES Act did, so you're in the same boat everybody else is.
Yeah.
No.
So I'll give you an example. So the Woodville School needed some compressor work because one of them went down. So we got a $19,000 bill that our guys got the quote. They showed it to the emergency manager, Tom Walsh, and Tom talked to FEMA. They said the expenditure was a go. Tom Walsh got the bill and applied it directly to his CARES account. So a good amount of that to avoid having to spend the money out of our budget, account for it, explain it to Kevin, have Kevin transfer it back. We took and submitted it to Tom, and Tom applied it right into his funding.
Okay.
So it saved a little bit of the volleying back and forth of, okay, I paid it, now you have to refund me this much. So, you know, Kevin, accounting, do what you guys have to do. They send it to us, we look at it, you know, we took it right to the source and put it right into the fund.
All right. Are we painting any flagpoles this year?
We could be.
Okay. We haven't done it for a while, that's why I was asking.
No, I know there's a lot of painting that has to be done that we should be doing.
Is that gold paint, Dennis, they use to paint those flagpoles?
Well, $3,500, you know, we can pay for something else.
Only on the west side.
You know, we paint our own.
Of course.
That's more,
Um,
we paint that one ourselves. No, that's all I have. Other ones that I question, I guess you already hit, so. Professional services is the big one. Okay. I'm
My
all-
general question would be, you know, on the salaries. I was looking at the salaries. I don't know, sewer department. A lot of people are 3.77. We implemented, you know, salary steps and lane changes a few years back as a result of your Collins study. Last year was the first full year. So this is ongoing.
Yep.
So steps and lanes, a lot of people look like they're 377. That seem about right.
Yeah, typically. So one of the things that skewed the number this year, so the cover sheet of this budget says that, you know, we're essentially hitting a 4% increase overall. If you were to add in the personal services lines that were cut out of it, you know, so if the budget was fully appropriated as, you know, what the town council saw last year, the budget came in right at 3%, and that personal services number drops. So that's a little bit of the hit, I guess, that we took because of, you know, some of the cuts that had to be made. Everything else that's essentially in it, though, is a contractual move from lane to lane. We did absorb probably the biggest, I think, when the Collins study went in, at least on the labor group, because that group is the largest. You know, some of the people did anywhere from 3.5%, and some, you know, were recategorized and restructured to where they almost got, you know, 6.5, 7. So that should fluctuate, you know, back to normal, where you see, you know, your 2.5, 3, or, you know, whatever the cost of living is that's, you know, keeping pace with inflation.
Have,
Okay. So something else. Go ahead.
have we lost any personnel, or are we level funded and fully funded by open positions? Do we have any open positions?
We have one position yet to be filled on the tax levy side that we're out to advertise for. And we have a foreman position in water and sewer.
But those are in the budget, right?
They are. So it's a hard year to interview. The foreman position that's open in water and sewer, we had a retirement. Donnie Schneider retired. And the gentleman that was awarded the position had been foreman over in water and sewer for 20 years. So he had moved over and left a vacancy in his job. So that job's posted. I believe that there's somebody in-house that meets the credentials to fill that. So that would be something that would be addressed in the short term.
No additional FTEs year over year.
Not this year, nope.
You
Any
want to skip? Sorry, go ahead, Dennis.
any
Others?
anticipated retirements coming up in this budget that will affect paybacks and stuff like that?
I just had one in Fleet. That one was something related to a medical condition existing outside of work, so there were no paybacks associated with that. And I may potentially have one in the highway division.
Okay.
You want to run down the capital requests for your team, if everybody else is good for now?
Sure. I'm just gonna pull that spreadsheet.
And sorry, did you, maybe I missed it, refuge, is that the trash, that's a capital, I mean, not a capital, that's an article, right?
It is, so that's something, the town council on Monday night we are up to renew the recycling contract. So they have to basically, they need to vote that to give myself and Steve the authority to execute the contract. So I'm kind of waiting on that vote to happen, so I know exactly what the budget number is gonna be. So as soon as Monday night happens, I could share it with you now, because Sherry will be putting it out in the packet. Outside of that, the only other warrant articles we're gonna have is eminent domain for $1, which is our standard every year article. And then because of the line item in the tree or forestry that we had spoken about, we are gonna put a supplemental budget appropriation article at the town meeting, just in case we end up needing some additional funding to net that out. Optimism tells me that we probably won't require anything. We think that should just neutralize itself based on the way some of the funding happened with COVID-19, but as a fail-safe, that will be a part of the town meeting package. So the only one that'll actually be, a dollar value appropriation, potential substance would be the refuse.
So just really at a high level then, you've got some fleet here.
Yep, a little bit of fleet, little bit of buildings. Again, trying to be modest. Some of the fleet things, were things that we deferred last year. So the crane truck that's on the list was deferred last year. One of the sidewalk machines we'd asked for was deferred last year. There's a truck for the buildings division that was also deferred last year. So it's
And those are all lease to purchase. Is that what that means, right?
the larger items are. So David and Stefan, anywhere on that spreadsheet that says 5-year LP, think of it like if you were to go to the car dealership and buy a vehicle, we're basically just financing it. So, to replace that crane truck is somewhere between $230,000 and $240,000. So to take 10% of the $2 million capital budget on one vehicle, this is a way to spread it out. I'll say in the next coming years, we'll see, a 3 to 5 year window where some of those larger items are going to start to fall off. So we'll have more modest requests related to that. It won't be such a bear to get some of the funding for them.
Thanks. Buildings, looks like routine maintenance, a couple of boilers at the senior center, and really the rest are relatively maintenance like, well, not maintenance, but heat pumps.
Yep.
Heat pumps at the Doyle, huh?
Yeah. So those are original to the building.
Right.
We have all of the pneumatics in that building are working. Just like they were brand new. The only thing in that building that is something that still needed to be addressed was the heat pumps. So unfortunately, it's a need, but it's not a need that could be equated to the CARES discussion.
Right.
So it fell into the capital request. So I apologize. I have the sheet in front of me now. So I'll just
that's
start
fine.
with the fleet section really quick. So The first lineup, that 2009 John Deere mower, that's a mower for our cemetery that actually bags grass. When that is not down in the cemetery, that will be deployed throughout fields throughout the town. If we have a really wet spring and the growing season, is particularly thick, the real mowers sometimes will leave a little bit of shag out on some of the fields and the common. So this mower will actually go up behind it and basically act like the dust buster behind it to try to get up as much as it can so we don't ruin the turf there. The next line down, that was also something that we had asked to be included in the capital plan last year and was deferred. Next line down is the Toro gang mower. This is basically the pride of the mowing fleet. This unit is, I believe, a 2010 or 2011. This cuts the common, all the major grounds throughout town. It cuts somewhere between 40 and 70 acres a week. The decks on this machine are getting old. There's a lot of moving parts. It's 14 feet wide. And unfortunately, they don't build them like they used to, and it's time to start thinking about a replacement. Down from that is a Ford utility van for the buildings division. This one is equipped with all the plumber's plumbing tools. This was something that was actually a gift from the light department that they gave to the town a whole bunch of years ago. The floors are rotted. The truck is painted white, but it's basically brown for the lower half of it. So she served us well, but it's time to go. We put in for discussion, not knowing what this year's request would be to be replaced in one of our loaders. This particular unit is a 1990 John Deere. One of the problems we have with it is that it's getting a little harder to find parts for, and it's a 30-year-old machine. This is something that we consciously deferred based on the amount of costs that it takes to acquire this vehicle, and knowing that the next two items I'm about to talk about are a little bit higher up on the priority chain. So the next item is truck 21 in the highway division. This is one of the 8 pieces, this frontline snow and ice control. This is equipped with the sander, snow plow, fully ready to go to battle with whatever Mother Nature throws at us. These vehicles are something, metal is very expensive and vehicles are very expensive. So we've shown it as a lease purchase. Should get the quotes from the financing company. That $53,000 a year payment should come in right around 51.5, I think. This is something that if we were to reduce the amount of vehicles like this we had on a fleet, ultimately our service level would probably end up dropping a little bit, or we'd be spending more time in overtime. It takes right now to do a standing operation about 5 hours. For every vehicle that you deplete, you're taking 250 lane miles of street, now doing that with less and less and less. 1999 International Crane, that was the one I mentioned earlier. That stroke of luck where we lost that during the large tree storm. The issue we have with this is, even though this is a forestry piece of equipment, this is basically our crane for everything. We do more moving with this, lifting with this than you could name. The problem we have with the current model now is it's a double channel frame. So what that means is there's 2 pieces of C-shaped metal sandwiched together and welded. It's actually starting to separate. So it's structurally starting to become unsound. Both of these 2 last vehicles too, just to note, these are 20-year vehicles. So, if you purchased in 2021, this would not show back up in the capital plan until sometime after probably 2035. The next line down, we have 2 sidewalk plows. What these are they basically built like little tanks. They're tracked vehicles with V-plows on the front of them. And they go out, and their whole purpose of production is to push snow. We have 2 of them. We have a 1989, I believe a 1988 is the other one. We show 2 here. Realistically, we'd like to replace 1. We just mentioned it in the plan, just to be transparent to the capital planning committee to say, hey, we have these 2 machines that are pushing 35 years old. We'd like to start addressing that. I can tell you, Stefan mentioned 2015. When that happened on the sidewalks, any snowblower, you name it, wasn't moving anything. These machines were tunneling through whatever was in front of them. They will actually throw snow over the roof and keep going. So they are a one-trick pony, but they do it very, very, very well. This is something that if we were to acquire a new one, I hope that I have a long, successful career here. I will never replace it. 2013 Chevy utility body. This had just come up on our capital plan. This has actually been removed. We think it's in good enough condition to push that along for a few more years. We have a 02 Chevy Tahoe that our staff drives in engineering. This is something that we got from the fire department as a hand-me-down. It's just starting to show its age at 20 years, existing in the salt and all the elements that we're in. That basically sums up our request for vehicles. If we move down to the building section, we asked for a storage shed at 11 Lafayette Street. One of the things with our building division is we don't really have a home for them. You know, their central office is town hall, but they have tools and equipment and different things stored all over the place. So we're looking to see if we can get a storage shed at town hall to, you know, put some of the things in. We've actually decided to not fund this going forward this year in place of a couple of other needs. 5 Common Street, we took a 3-phased approach to replacing all the aluminum single pane windows in this building. This $20,000 represents the last phase and will get us through the 3rd floor of the building and out. So that building will have complete new windows. Below that, cemetery water bottle filler. The COVID-19 pandemic and things like that, there's been a push to get some water bottle fillers and the availability to have, you know, drinking fountains that are filtered in all the buildings throughout town. This would be the price to be able to do that in our cemetery building. Few things to note on the Civic Center, the exterior column repointing. And we have a couple of projects that are going on at the Civic Center now that we'd like to wrap up before we put more on our plate. It's not in a condition that is dangerous or cannot wait another year. So we consciously have pulled that from our request. Below that, the Dull Bear hot water heater. Friday afternoon on February 27th, I got a phone call from our plumber that let go. So we pulled that from the capital request and are replacing that. It actually was just replaced and put back into service on Monday. Painting at the Doyle. This is just on for transparency. The capital planning committee has said numerous times that they believe painting is an operating expense. Again, this is more of just us demonstrating to them we've identified a need here. As we talked about the 2 heat pump motors at the Doyle School.
Excuse me, I was going to ask about that. So always a pet peeve of mine, maintenance on capital. So it's not getting funded through capital, or it is for the paint?
Painting, no painting in the last 2 years has been done through capital.
Thanks.
So that would all come through our operating budget. But, you know, it's highlighted there. It's highlighted there at an approximate cost, but then zeroed out in the final tally again, just so they're aware that, you know, it's something that we pay attention to and we are doing these things.
Thanks. Yeah.
And feel free, anybody. I know I'm probably going pretty quick, but if you want me to stop, just interrupt and we can talk about whatever we need to. Next item down, the garage door at North Ave. In our fleet maintenance shop, we have a garage door that's basically falling off of the building. This $30,000 was put into the capital plan to replace it. It's more of a place saver. The town was gracious enough to give us some funding for safety repairs of that building. We do have enough uncommitted funding to be able to do that, so we're doing that as we speak. The next one down, the Greenwood School had asked for a split system air conditioning for the administrative offices. The $20,000 quote was one they got from a vendor to come in and install it. Michael, our HVAC mechanic, has an excellent relationship with some of the HVAC suppliers he worked for. He worked for the company Dakin for quite a long time. He's very friendly with people that are very high up the chain, so we get excellent pricing there. We're going to take that project on and accomplish that for somewhere around $8,000. That'll just be funded out of DPW operating.
What's the T1 stand for?
That's the school department. So that's a priority ranking from them.
Okay,
They
thanks.
asked us if we could rank that as a tier 1 priority for them. It's just some of the mindset for the capital planning committee. What the committee is going to do this year, because the way last year wrapped up and they ended up having to have subsequent meetings when capital got reduced, they're actually going to rank and prioritize everything in $500,000 increments. So they'll have the priority 1 requests, priority 2, 3, and 4. So as we start seeing this more, we'll start seeing that ranking criteria. God forbid, if they ever have to make any decisions. The Greenwood School fire escape repair. This is something that we also have to do. We have to test it and have it inspected. This is the secondary egress from the building on that building. There's usually likely some load testing and some welding involved. And then when it's done, a coat of paint is applied to it. We pulled this out. This is something that our group's going to do out of the operating budget currently. Also at the Greenwood School, the girls' room needs new toilets. They are period correct, probably from 1970s, 1960s maybe. The flanges are starting to get worn out. They're old. So this would be DPW labor and all new facilities to renovate that. Also at the Greenwood School, we have an oil tank in the ground that we have to remove. This is the last oil tank that we have in the ground. This is something that we need to get out over the summer because of the way it's situated against the building. It's right under all the back windows. The price for this oil tank removal has actually reduced to $23,000. The reason being for that is the contractor is not going to replace the concrete pads there. Our group is going to pave the area of disturbance after the fact. That's something that's in our scope every day. It made sense for us to take that on and get a cost savings rather than have to pay somebody else to do it. The Greenwood Fire Station, a complete window replacement. They have some windows there where the sashes are failing. The seams on them are dry rotting. They're basically sieves for the wind. This $20,000 was an original placeholder as we were waiting for a contracted estimate. Banner Glass in town gave us an excellent price of $7,900. So this line item shrunk quite a bit. Also at the Greenwood Fire Station, we've asked for an emergency generator. They have an emergency generator at this building, which is basically the same generator you would run something, an inflatable balloon house in your backyard, minus the pull cord. It's built in a wooden box. It is largely underpowered and not sufficient enough to keep the radio telecommunication working on that building. This $23,000 price is all encompassing to fix that. Next at the nursery, we've asked for some fencing. We need to be good neighbors there. The fencing and the gates is in ugly condition, but more importantly, when it was installed, there's a gap in between the 2 gates. So if you wanted to get in, you could literally walk right through it. Compiled with that.
Where is the nursery? What is that?
Sylvan Street. So if you go past Broadway pumping station, it's the first left. There's a building in the woods there.
It's right next to where the water department is.
Also at that site, there's a garage in there.
2 bays.
What's that?
2 bays, right?
Yeah. So in lieu of doing a storage shed at Lafayette Street, the buildings division took a look at that building, and it needs to be resided. There's some rot on it, from years and years and years. We basically have no funding and no attention to it. That building is going to have a once over and gone through. They're going to take care of all the rot. We're going to address some of the way that the drainage functions as a slope of the topography, so it doesn't run right into the building, and rehab that to make it usable storage space or workspace if we need to stand something up and build prefab walls inside. The senior center. The senior center right now is powered by 4 boilers on the 3rd floor of the building. To the best of my knowledge, these boilers are original to the building. One of them has failed, and the rest of them don't look very good. This project would be to take all 4 that are existing, put them out of service and replace them with 2 new efficient boilers. The final price of this literally just came into my office as we started, and it's going to be $115,000 to do that. Window replacement at Town Hall. This is to start the first floor of windows and start replacing some of the rot. Take this approach that we took with 5 Common Street, go floor by floor by floor and finish the whole building. The next one, the lower roof at Town Hall. This is something that will be done out of operating, so this was not put forward in the capital plan. Next piece, so townwide BMS convert to AL. So what this is right now we have 4 different programs that operate the HVAC controls in buildings throughout town. One of which a vendor has given us a particular amount of trouble, the inability of them to reliably come out and service some of the things that they have going on. We're looking to make mechanical continuity out of this and transfer some of the buildings to a company called Automated Logic. We've had excellent luck with them at the police station. Our folks know it, they understand it, and the vendor is very receptive to joining us and servicing their pieces. This number is a placeholder. We've asked them to go out through every building and evaluate it. I would anticipate that this number would start to shrink probably quite dramatically. We do not have the final estimate from them yet. They were tied up at the police station with some of the feasibility work and design with the addition. So lastly, the Yule School flooring abatement. This $30,000 would essentially do 3 classrooms or just under 7,000 square feet of asbestos tile. This has been something that the committee is going to be pulling. There's nothing wrong with the tile. It does not pose any safety issues right now. It's not friable. It makes sense to defer it, not knowing the long-term plan of that school. If it were to become a safety issue, it would get addressed immediately. This is a request that was a little bit more proactive than reactive, but has since been pulled. Moving down into roads, if nobody has any questions.
The abatement, Joe, wouldn't it be better just to overlay it?
They could do either or. Honestly, Dennis, it's in fine shape.
That's why I'm saying it's probably cheaper to overlay it instead of removing it.
Yeah, I mean, the discussion was, do you even need to overlay it? You know, based on the way that, you know, the building's being used and the long-term future being kind of relatively unknown, it was decided to leave it as is. We've had a couple instances in some other schools where, you know, things become friable. We essentially do, you know, small patches, and then, you know, more of a programmatic replacement after the fact. This request is probably a little bit more proactive than it needs to be, and the committee decided that that would likely be something that they would defund for this year.
Okay.
Moving into the roads section, so it's no secret that the citizens of Wakefield want their roads paved, and they want them paved ASAP. It was fantastic last year to get the bonding article to start catching up and getting way ahead on that. Our highway division and the new supervisor there put in a request this year for a small roadway paver. What this is it's essentially a paver. It's 4.5 feet wide. It extends up to 7 feet wide. And this will allow the town to go out and take trenches, excavate them, and pave them. This will also double in. Right now, if we pave an asphalt sidewalk, we do it by hand. We literally dump a hot top barrel full of asphalt on the ground and we rake it out. This would be all machine applied and something that would give a better end product. So they asked for $60,000 to be able to accomplish that. Another thing we put in here, we've been trying to do a cremation garden at Forest Glade Cemetery to get us a little bit more space and try to push off the need for an expansion project. You know, we're not at that point yet, but it's something that, you know, if we can get a cremation only area, we stand to sink a lot of those in the ground where otherwise, you know, they'd be taking up areas where you could get a full interment. This has been pulled for now. It's been pulled for now because it probably gets up into the warrant article threshold. Being aware of the financial situation. This isn't a must-have yet. It's a nice to have. So that has essentially been pulled. The next one down, the Broadway gate design and construction for transparency. This is included in here. This is something that the Department of Public Works is going to go to town meeting in the fall to ask for. As you know, at the 11th hour of Broadway reopening with the National Grid work, the MBTA and Keolis and Federal Railroad told us that in no way, shape, or form could we reopen the crossing there, claiming that an accident that happened in that intersection put us over the safety threshold to keep the quiet zone in effect. Essentially, what the quiet zone is, the MBTA does not have to blow the horns through the intersection. If we were to open that up right now, we would lose the quiet zone and the threshold of compliance for us would be significantly greater. So the intersection remains closed.
Excuse me, Dave, you jumping off or are you still hanging on a little bit?
I'm here now. I got another 10 minutes and I'm gonna jump to mobile.
Okay, great. So Joe, the 2.5, that's gonna be a warrant article to straighten out Broadway is what you're saying?
It will be. So what that'll do is it'll address the gates appropriately and put us under the threshold so we have some breathing room instead of towing the line. Again, more of a transparency piece. This is just something that we wanted to note that's on our radar. Definitely too big for the $2 million article for capital, but we had a dialogue on it. The next one down, an ADA transition plan. What this is going to be is this is going to be a plan where a third-party company comes in, evaluates the ADA compliance in every building in town. Egresses, exits, door pulls, signage, you name it. It's also going to address the sidewalks and everything on the hardscape end of town too. This is going to accomplish two things. This is going to generate us a capital plan, so things that we can go out and start to take care of for ADA compliance. It's also going to help us that, God forbid, the Department of Justice was to come in and take a look at some things going on and recognize some problems. We now have a plan of action and we're working towards taking care of that. Doing this will unlock the opportunity to apply for some grant funding more aggressively related to this. So it's a little bit insurance policy, a little bit capital plan, a little bit door opener for some grant opportunities. So this is probably one of the most important ones that we have in there as far as the future perspective is concerned. Moving from there, the Parks Department has asked for a new leaf blower. The brand name is Skag. This is replacing a unit that was bought in the 70s. It served us well, but it was bought in the 70s. Further on down, there's a miscellaneous section. So the Department of Public Works and the Assessors Department is investing in our GIS data to make sure that we're pulling our records out of the Stone Age and on paper and building a more intuitive, interactive online piece of infrastructure so we can kind of enhance the services that we're doing. This is something that would have been a 3-phase project. The $70,000 represents phase 2. We feel that we have one more phase afterwards. We're probably around $50,000 to complete it. The sea containers for Nahat Street, some of the safety work that we did at the barn or the North Ave facility, we had to have structural engineers come out and weight rate some of the mezzanines that are in a garage. They're finishing that right now. I know unofficially, more than likely, I'm going to have to decommission at least 2 of them, which means anything that's stored on it, I have to create space for. The sea container is an easy way for us to essentially get a storage shed and get those things in under lock and key outside of the weather so that we can kind of protect some of our tools and assets. This $18,000 price would be to acquire 2 new ones, and we currently rent one right now. That is impractical to rent, so we just want to purchase it outright. It would essentially free us up some of the storage that we're ultimately planning on losing.
Is there any storage at the, what I call the old cable TV building at the Galvin School? Who uses that?
Potentially, I don't know what the school department has in that now.
I thought we use it as far as Public Works, Jake and those guys use it.
Are you talking about the building that's outside of the ball fields there?
The one that's next to the soccer field, where the old
Yes.
TV dishes were, the cable TV company put it up. It's a metal building.
I don't know. I would have to check and see what's in there. I'm gonna imagine that there's some of the grooming equipment for the fields. I'm sure like lacrosse might have some nets in there and some different things like that. I'd have to double check with Dennis and get back to you on that, though, to tell you exactly what's inside of that. He might have some of the rubber pellets that we store when we, kind of go over the fields and groom them in the spring in that building as well.
Okay, because it's a good sized building. I just didn't know if we could repurpose that and get rid of the surface stuff that people just using it because it's there for convenience.
But
Okay.
so that basically sums up the tax side. On the sewer end, we have one large scale pump that we have to replace. This is a towable unit with a 5-inch discharge. This is something that, God forbid, we're going to move a lot of water fast. It pushes it and takes care of business quickly and efficiently. And then the system improvements. This is something that we just do every year. We take a little bit of money out of reserve and make it available that, God forbid, we run into an issue where we have to replace 60, 80, 100 feet of line 2 or 3 times a year. We have the money to either be able to pay for the materials and do it ourselves, or in the event that we have to contract some help to be able to do it, we can do so. On the water end, out of our compliance, we have to do a risk reduction and emergency plan. The treatment plant, and that's included in this. And then the system improvements are up a little bit on the water side. And what this is going to include is we're out to bid right now for what is called a diffused aeration system. What this is going to do is take compressed air and pump it through a series of lines in the lake and actually aerate the water. And the goal behind this is to decrease something that they call stratification. So the water, when it gets really warm, layers, and different layers have different turbidity or things in them on a microscopic level, whether it's salt, iron, natural elements that occur in it. What this will do is keep the water moving, improve the raw water quality. It should drive down the cost of the treatment process and make a better end product. The other thing that this will do is if you've heard, I know myself, if not Rick before me, we've mentioned that, in the droughts and the high heat of the summer, iron and manganese naturally kind of come out of the ground and occur more in the lake. This will combat that. What happens when that instance is going on is that the pumping station actually has to turn off because you're pulling all that into the sand filters and you're doing yourself no service. So you end up losing 6 or 7 weeks in the middle of the summer because of a drought or extreme temperatures. Putting this in place will keep the water moving and keep that pumping station going longer. That project should cost about $185,000. And then the rest of the money we would use to either replace hydrants or different water main sections. I think that basically sums that up.
Joe,
Anybody-
sorry, one more typo there on the system improvements underwater.
Yeah.
My wife would be so proud of me. I can't spell to
Oh.
save my, I can't spell to save my life is the point to that. Engineer, can't spell, sorry.
Yeah, you got both daily doubles. I'm impressed.
All right, great. So we'll see what happens to the overall capital. You're working through that, and that'll be coming up shortly as well with us. So, yep.
Yeah. So I fill in. I've been giving Joe Bertrand the updates as they go. You want me to forward them on to you guys so you could see them and just kind of track that as it moves along, or?
The capital?
Yeah.
That's fine. I think I don't know if there's a subcommittee working with the capital group or not to review it before it gets to our board, but
So I think Joe is the liaison. He's been to 2 of the meetings.
Yeah.
He's kept in the loop. He's kind of going crazy with the high school feasibility study, but I know he's planning on returning.
Yeah,
And
send it
then
along to myself and the other gentleman on the call. Great. Yep.
Will do. And then I'll also send you, just so you have it, what the refuse budget is gonna look like. That's, when the council debates that next week, or Monday, I should say, then we'll kind of have an idea where that is. I feel like contractually, we've done pretty well with coming into our new recycling agreement. So we've tried to keep that, as limited as we can in the amount of increase that's there. Certainly last year, going from $69 a ton to $90 a ton was a killer. This year, you have a 3% increase, so we're going to be going for $90 a ton with the incinerator, $92.50. Outside of that, the expenses aren't so off base like they were last year. So it should be a little bit more palatable, but I'll forward that along so you guys can take a look at it.
Any questions from the group?
Yeah, I
Dennis?
got one, Joe. As far as the Broadway Crossing goes,
Yep.
we can't get the electrical company to pay for it. They're going curb to curb. Isn't that part of the curb, the crossing?
It's something that we're certainly going to try to negotiate with them. I don't know how successful we're going to be, but that's certainly going to be part of the conversation. Dennis, what I can tell you is one of the things that we were able to do there, I think you were on the board of Public Works the last time we cut through with the water in that crossing, weren't you?
Yeah, that was a nightmare coming across.
All right, so you put the 20-inch main in the sleeve with Weston and Sampson, Dick Rudiette. I think there were a few of you on there. National Grid actually paid for a redundancy crossing there to the tune of $275,000. So we have another sleeve and another water main going underneath that. So we have now double redundancy into that train tracks that they paid for because they were working in the area and needed to negotiate a couple of things with us, and that's what the town received in trade. So that's a project that probably not a lot of people will understand the importance of, but as far as redundancy and flexibility for the future, it was a complete win.
Oh yeah, that's great to have because trying to deal with the railroads is unbelievable.
I'm learning. Just one of the other things I just wanted to touch base with really quick, 2 seconds. So as you know, I just wanted to highlight this because I think this is pretty important. The Albion Street grant for $380,000 that's being constructed now. The engineering group just got another $122,000 grant to do sidewalks and some infrastructure improvements down in Greenwood at Oak Street and Main Street. And successfully got a $6,000 grant to do a couple water bubblers at public schools. She also got a $9,000 grant from the DEP to do some trash diversion, and then the Broadway project. So we've had a good year with seeking out alternative funding that doesn't impact the ratepayers and the tax base, and putting some projects in the ground. So from my perspective, I'm pretty proud of the group, and I'm really trying to push them to explore every opportunity where we can take it off the tax base and get it somewhere else. So I hope that we continue this streak.
Are we getting the light department to pay any rent for Nahan Street?
I don't know if they pay any rent for Nahan Street. We did get a cost share for them for some paving this year. If you want to draft up the bill, though, I'll certainly send it to them and tell you what they say.
I like it, Dennis. You gotta keep at it, Dennis.
I got to get that light department one way or the other.
That's it. Those light guys.
Those lights are coming pretty soon, that light renewal next year, I think. Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, Ann, did you say Ann and others doing the grants? That's great news. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's if there's an avenue to try to seek it out, we're gonna try. The only one that I thought we should have got that we didn't, we did a big one for some drainage around Lake Quannapowitt, and what it would have done is built us a good amount of infrastructure, and also would have taken care of some of the water quality issues that have been talked about since it seems like the dawn of time. that project
Yeah.
was a home run all year long. And it turned out that the award was due just before the shutdown happened and the funding got pulled back. So that left a little sour taste, but I think as soon as we find out that that's available, we're gonna revisit that and go even harder on that one, but.
All right, great. I'm good. Dennis, you all set?
Yeah, I'm up there.
Yeah,
Okay.
and for Stefan and David, Joe's very accessible. You got his email, you can call the office. He's always willing to sit down and chat about any items that you might have.
Yeah, anything.
And you're going and I'm gonna go with you Monday night for town council. The liaison usually, your budget is being presented to town council, correct?
Yes, yep. So we'll have on the docket, they have to review our trash contract and vote to approve execution. They also, I shouldn't say trash, it's refuse and recycling. There's a recycling portion of it. They'll review the budget and then they will talk about the warrant articles, only because eminent domain is cheap and the budget appropriation is what it is. What they do with the refuse article, I don't know if they're gonna wanna talk about it and discuss it, or if they're gonna wanna table that and have me come back. I'm not 100% sure what's gonna happen. I know there'll be a dialogue on it.
Right.
So before that goes out, I'll make sure you guys have it so you can see it.
Okay, and I'll join that Zoom meeting on Monday as the liaison. Others are welcome if you want, don't have to. Appreciate your time, all of you, as well as Joe and Ann, thanks.
Thank you.
And again, questions, pass it along.
Yep, anytime.
Motion to adjourn, Dennis.
So moved.
Okay,
All right, see you later, guys.
Okay, be good.
thanks for your time.